Okay. Okay. I'm going to try this again because I'm very results oriented and I would like to figure this out. Sending Amber. Crossed fingers and toes that it works. Okay, we are waiting for her to join and let's hope.
Oh,
Oh my God. Okay.
yes.
Yay. All right. Thank you again, Amber, for joining us. And sorry, guys, for the technical difficulties.
No worries.
But we got there eventually, and hopefully it takes. Okay, so Amber, what I want to ask is like you've been doing stand up for 6 years, you know. I met you on the London circuit, but you gig around the UK as well. Is that correct?
Yes.
And what would you say? I mean, you know, like it's not a lot of money what we or any sometimes what we get. But you know, you keep coming back and you know, you're a very positive person. You don't strike me as someone who's jaded at all. Like, why do you keep coming back to stand up? Like you were very you know, hesitant to try it and then now you've caught the bug. What is it that you find the most fulfilling?
Yeah, I'm like a cockroach in stand up. You just can't die. You can't kill me off. Yeah, I don't know. It's one of those things, like even if I never made any money from it, I love how I feel when I'm doing it. So I love the version of myself that I get to be when I'm on stage and I get to wear like my tiny clothes and like my lipstick and everything. So I love that version of myself that I get to be. I think of like the version of me that's on stage is like me at a party with all my best friends and I've had a glass of wine. It's like my sort of very chill vibe place. So I just love it. I don't know. And it's also like every gig you do is slightly different. The audience is slightly different. There's a different vibe every time you go. So even if you think, you know what, I've done this so many times before, there's always going to be something different. There are going to be different people in your audience who've got different outlooks. They respond to your jokes differently. When you talk to them, they've got different answers to all your questions. So no one gig is ever the same as the next. So there's always going to be something that keeps you entertained and something that's kind of novel and exciting to if you see what I mean. So
Yes.
that's why there's always something new to learn, and there's always going to be a different vibe every time. No one gig is the same as the next one.
And I do think that's what some people actually find very intimidating about it, right? Is because your audience is never the same. And if
Mhm.
it might be people coming to see a repeat performance, I mean, what if they've had a horrible day? What if they're in a
Mm.
horrible mood? Or what if, you know, yeah, what if something else is going on that you can't control,
Yeah,
right? You know, we're not in charge of the vibe they bring to the function, but we
yeah.
are in charge of the vibe they leave with. And
Mm.
I think that's one of the most exciting, scary, like terrifying and fulfilling things also about stand up. I think there's no better feeling like when you can just fill a room with laughter and you might not even know anyone at all. Um, and I do love your act so much. It's so different to mine. And again, you've performed at the Bitches and Stitches debut show in London, and it was quite the key change. I'd like for people who haven't seen you perform, I guess, how would you describe like what your act is? What can the audience expect when they come to see you perform?
Oh, well, thank you, first of all. That's really lovely of you to say. I mean, I love your act as well. Like you say, we're quite different in terms of our vibes, but I think they really complement each other like
Mm.
really well. So, I don't know, for me, like to describe my act, hopefully I come across as quite sort of warm and silly and um yeah, I guess it's one of those weird things where I've had people describe me as like articulate. They say, "Oh, you come across as very articulate," which I find hysterical because I really don't, I just don't see that at all. But it's like I'm not a very edgy comedian, put it that way. I'm not the edgy person in the room. I'm not an edgelord by any stretch. I mean, I'm very much the cup of tea in the Marks and Spencer's pajamas kind of person. That's my vibe, and that is what I bring. And I'm not going to pretend to be anything else. So, yes, hopefully, kind of warm and silly, and yes, I mean, like if my comedy act were a drink, I'm probably like a mug of Horlicks or a mug of hot chocolate or something, you know, like kind of.
You are though. Oh my God, that is it. Okay, carry on.
Yeah. Yeah, so like, I mean, some people come in and depending on their vibe, I mean, like I know acts that I would describe as like, you know, a shot of adrenaline or something. I'm not that. I'm probably the mug of cocoa. I sort of calm you down a little bit. So depending on the vibe, sometimes that's what you need. Sometimes you need the person who's the shot of adrenaline. So I guess it depends. I am not the edgy person. If you're looking for dark, edgy comedy, that is not me. But if you're looking for someone who's going to sort of like gently wash over you and you leave with a nice sort of calm feeling at the end, then that's probably more my vibe.
I do think though, I mean, the challenge is there, right? Because as a comedian, I mean, in the beginning when when I was a baby comic, it was just like, okay, what can I do that this audience likes? But really, I think the challenge is that you have to show up as yourself,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe like 1.3 times more yourself.
Yeah,
And win people over, and when you do, it really does feel wonderful. And what I love too is like again, I'm not from here. But I feel like I know like you and like I know the UK and like the culture and all of that like a little bit better. And it's wonderful to just feel less othered. I am fresh off the boat, like I've not been here for a year. And I do want to ask, you talk a lot about being from Essex. The audience always has a reaction to that. Please give me some context.
yeah. So so basically the Essex thing, like the way I would contextualize it, right? If anyone knows anything about like America, right, and the US, what Essex is to the UK is probably like the American equivalent of New Jersey. So we're like sort of outside a big city. If anybody
Mm.
sort of knows like American geography, if that's your sort of thing, like New Jersey is, outside New York, and they have a reputation for being sort of close to the big city, but they have their own vibe. Quite often that vibe is they're very sort of spirited people, should we put it? Very spirited, but very sort of clever and very entrepreneurial. Fair amount of crime, but we'll gloss over that. But it's, yeah, they're kind of, you're known for being kind of your own sort of distinct identity. And I think Essex is probably like that when you compare it to like London. We're like to the east of London. We've very much got our own vibe. We're connected to London, but we're also our own separate people. We're known, in the UK. The shorthand for Essex is that it's a bit of a shithole. That's kind of that's the thing. That's the reaction, right? When you go, "Oh, I'm from Essex," people go, "Oh," because they're like, "Oh, poor you." But it's so it's kind of shorthand for I'm from a shitty place. But actually, Essex is a place I like. It's one of those things. I guess a lot of people have this where like you can moan about where you're from because you're from there. If anybody else tried to criticize you, you'd be like, "Don't you dare." And I think it's the same with Essex. Like as an Essex person, you sort of you have your concerns about it, or you sort of you can have a bit of a moan and a bit of a joke about it. But I do love being from Essex, and I'm very proud of it. And I think as a people, we're very sort of spirited and very entrepreneurial. We're very good at things like that. And especially Essex women, because Essex girls, as they're called, quite often get a bit of a reputation, a bit of stigma for being a bit kind of dumb, um, and all kinds of things like that. And we're absolutely not at all. And yeah, so I love being from Essex, and that I do joke about it, but I am also like proud to be from there and be from that part of the country.
I mean, I guess the fact that it can get such a spirited or divisive reaction also gives you something to play off of, and it's
Yeah,
a good, I guess, like barometer for what kind of audience you're dealing with.
yeah.
Um, and your very first gig, did you come out to London? Was it a gig in Essex? Tell me about like, because you said you were kind of hesitant to start stand-up comedy. So
Yeah.
was there something that happened, or was there just like what I guess changed your mind and made you get to that first gig, and where was it?
Yeah, so my first gig was in Essex. Yes. So yeah, it was a hometown gig actually. It was literally like 10 minutes down the road from me. So it was something where like at the time in my life I wasn't enjoying very much. I had a job that I didn't particularly enjoy, and I kind of felt like I was at a bit of a dead end really with things. And it was one of those things where like in my head, I thought, right, I need to do something to just shake up what I'm doing.
Hmm.
And in my town in Southend, there happened to be like an arts festival on, and part of that was like a comedy sector. And a local comedian who runs a lot of gigs where I am was doing a comedy workshop, like a stand-up comedy workshop, where you go and learn to do it. And it was just like a
Nice.
one-day thing.
Okay.
So you literally went there in the morning and you spent like 5 hours learning how to write comedy, and then you perform like 5 minutes at the end of the day.
Oh,
And it,
wow.
yeah, so
That's
it was
like
like,
pretty turbocharged.
yeah,
Okay.
so it was like a day, and it cost £10. It was £10 to
Oh,
go and do this
wonderful.
thing for a day. And I thought, for the sake of £10, I'm going to just take a risk for a tenner. Like, and it was one of those things where I didn't tell anyone I was going to do it. I thought, I'll go and do it by myself. I spend
Mm.
£10 on it. If I'm shit, doesn't matter. It's a day out. So
Hmm.
that was kind of my logic. And then it just clicked when I did it. When I was in the workshop, I just started writing and writing and writing and writing. And the guy came over and said, "Are you all right?" And I was like, "Yeah." And I just kept going. I sort of didn't need any intervention. I was just sort of going and going and going. And I realized I had loads of stuff actually to write down. And so I did that. I did the showcase bit at the end, which was terrifying at the time. But again, it was one of those things where once I was up on the stage and I told like one or two jokes, it just clicked and it felt like, yeah, this is the right thing to do. This is the thing. Um, and yeah, once you've sort of got that bug for it, you just keep going.
Absolutely. And I mean, the stage fright is real. I've been doing this for 8 years. I still get stage fright every time. And I just
Yeah.
have to have this whole process where, like, I tell myself, like, no, this is not a fact. It is actually telling you something else, and you care about doing a good job. But I mean, it's a whole thing for me. And I wonder, like, do you still get stage fright? How do you deal with it? And what advice would you give to people starting out who are so nervous about, a pretty frightening experience?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm really glad to hear you say that you still get nervous, because I get nervous. I completely get nervous. It depends on the gig as well. There are some gigs where, because they're very regular ones that I do and they're ones that we've done a lot, you kind of don't get so nervous because you kind of know a lot of the people there, and that's not so much of an issue. But if I'm going to like a town I've never been to and I'm doing a gig where I know absolutely no one, and you're starting right from scratch, that's still really scary. In terms of like what I would recommend to people who are starting or thinking of doing it, I would say, like, you're allowed to be shit. So get that out there straight away. You do not have to be good, like, to start out. You are allowed to be shit at it. You're allowed to have a go, not like it, and not do it again. You're allowed to do it, be crap, and keep going. You're allowed to sort of do it for however long you want. So get that out first of all. You have permission to beat it, so you don't need to have any pressure on yourself in that sense. Um, Also, I think a lot of people, when they look at stand-ups, they think that stand-ups are like special people, like like we're very sort of arty, cool people who are like born with this skill, and it's absolutely not that. The only difference is that we got up and had a go compared to someone else. So the way that you become a stand-up comedian is you just get up and have a go. That is literally it. You don't have to. I was not an arty person at all. Like, I was not the person at school who was like into drama, or like in the arty kids. I was like a quite nerdy person at school. It was all very sort of High School Musical. I was like the nerd who secretly
Spelling
wanted to
bee
be.
champ, yo.
Yeah,
Same here,
I
dude. Same
know.
here. I was also spelling bee
Yeah,
champ.
nice.
And I
Oh
will
my
dine out on that award until I get another one.
god.
Until I get another one.
Same. It's my only prize. Maybe that's what you have to be then to be a comedian. You just have to be a spelling bee champion. Maybe that's the way in. Um, yeah. No, I think, yeah, just everybody gets nervous with it, and I think it's that thing of taking the first step. It's like you've got this obstacle in front of you that you need to step over, and once you've stepped over it, you go, oh, okay, that's all right. The build up is always worse than actually doing the thing, so you have
I
to
mean,
remember
because it becomes real, right? And I think that when we haven't done a thing, everything is just speculation, and your mind can spiral and you can run away with that.
that.
And
Mhm.
like, one thing I do tell people who are comedy curious, like in a workshop, is that, like, look, there's one universal truth in stand-up comedy, and I've seen it happen to paid comedians, to pros. I've seen it happen to first timers, but it does happen to everyone, and that is that you bomb.
Mhm.
Everybody has one bad day. And the fact of the matter is, like, you don't know when it's going to happen necessarily, and you can try and recover, but sometimes we don't. There is a possibility, and it happens to everybody. But the thing is, I don't think people show up to a comedy gig saying, "Oh, I hope this person isn't funny." Right? So the thing to remember, right, is that they are rooting for you. They do want to laugh. It's just the onus, I think, is on us to find a way to connect with them and bring them that joy. But again, I don't think people are showing up being like, I'm gonna have a shit time, like nobody wants that. So really, like, people are on our side, and I think it's easy to forget, because there is a lot of pressure around it. So I wanted to, for my next question, I did want to ask, like, you know, there is a difference I learned quite quickly between, yapping with your mates and telling them a funny story than to actually like deliver a tight five on stage to a bunch of
Yeah.
strangers. And like, what would you say, in your opinion, that difference is?
So I guess the difference comes down to stagecraft, which is something that you learn as you do stand up. You start out as the person being like the funny person telling stories, being the funny person down the pub quite often. But yeah, I suppose a key difference is the more you do stand up and the more you practice telling your jokes, you realize there are things that will make or break a joke. There will be things not just in terms of the words you say, but how you say them, the order of your sentence, where you put the punchline, the fact it's got to be at the end of the sentence, sometimes adding in a pause in a particular place, or a facial expression, or a gesture,
Mm.
or something that just elevates it. So you can you can be the funny person in your group of friends, or you can be like the funny person down the pub, but there is what elevates it in terms of stand up is going to be those things like stagecraft that you learn over time. And also, I think you have to bear in mind, if you're telling jokes to your friends down the pub, they're your friends. There's going to be a certain amount of goodwill for you and what you
Mm.
say, which with an audience, there might not be because they don't know who you are. So they don't have that connection to you straight away. Sometimes you've got to kind of prove yourself a little bit more before they will give you the laugh, which is not a bad thing. It's something that you have to kind of learn to do. It's the difference between telling a story to someone who is like your best friend and they've heard it millions of times before versus meeting someone at a party and you've never met them before, they don't know anything about you, and you've got to tell that story to them. There's going to be a different relationship because they don't have that prior goodwill or that prior connection to you. So I think you sometimes, and it's a good thing, sometimes you have to work a little bit harder to get that response in
And
stand
I
up. But that's
do, I do believe that, right? Because we're not walking into a room of people who immediately trust us.
mm,
Um, and I think, I mean, of course, they're also walking in with their own assumptions about you and their own beliefs, that you have to navigate when you want to connect with them and when you want to win them over. And there's the time limit. Your friends, or they say, are going to be there forever.
mm,
They're going to hang around. They want to listen to the rest of your story, or they won't. I mean, there's some people who have stuff to do, but for the most part, right, like, they're invested. I think it is that act of having to tell people, oh, like, I'm someone you can trust, and also like reward them like regularly with that space to laugh in.
yeah.
But I guess, what was the best advice you've ever received, to prepare you to like be like a comedian, like that still resonates with you today?
Yeah, that is a really good question because I've had a lot of advice and I'm trying to think of one that sticks out. I mean, the thing that sticks out is like you were saying about earning the trust of the audience, I
Mm,
think. So something that has been kind of said to me as like a crucial point, and it's been said by a few people, is if you connect with your audience in the first 60 seconds, they will go with you with whatever else you have to say. But it's those first few seconds, that first kind of minute,
mm.
that's quite important. It's kind of crucial to whether they're going to go with the rest of what you say. And it's one of those things. It's kind of overlooked. Sometimes people go into their set and they just go bang straight into a joke, um, and they don't take the time to kind of listen to what's going on in the room, or they've kind of come straight from somewhere else, don't really know what the vibe is in the room. I think if you can take like 1 minute or even 30 seconds, like literally one line, just to connect with people and show you're in the same room and you know the vibe and you know what's going on, it makes everybody relax a little bit.
Mm.
And it also means that whatever else you have to say, they're much more likely to go with you on it because you connected with them straight away. So yeah, I think that was a really good piece of advice, and it's something I've tried to do. Generally, when I go on stage, the first thing I say won't be like a proper joke. It will be, something about the room, something that someone else has said,
Mm-hmm.
or something else that's gone on, because it's like just taking a second to just kind of level yourself in the room and get everybody on the same kind of vibes. So
I do
I
think
would say,
that's,
yeah.
yeah, that's wonderful advice because I mean, I know when I started out, I was just like, okay, I know what I'm going to say. I'm going to do the thing, and I treating stand up or performing stand up as a sort of one-way experience, but it's very much not that because I mean, who are we if we're not making an audience laugh and if they don't feel connected to us? But no, that is wonderful advice. Is there I've asked the best advice that you've received. Have you ever received like useless advice?
Um, oh, I don't know about useless advice. And I won't say who. I've occasionally had it. It's not anyone that we both know. So, but
No,
it's
let's not. We're not about that. Yeah.
no, but I've occasionally, and I'm not going to spill any tea on anybody. Don't worry. I've occasionally not at London gigs. I've had it at sort of like different gigs I've done, where I've done a certain bit that I know works, and someone has come up to me and they've said, "Lose that bit. Don't do that bit." When they've heard it once in one room, and I think, I'm going to stick with my own gut with that, because I know it works. Maybe tonight wasn't the night for it, but I
Yeah.
know from doing it before it has done well. So that's the thing. Sometimes it's
Mm.
knowing whose advice to take, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, and learning who is good at giving the feedback, and who, like, there are certain people that I would trust to give feedback, and others where I sort of go, maybe I'm not so sure. So
Well, the thing is
yeah.
also, right, like they're bringing their own experience into it, and sometimes it's only about their experience, and not really being like, we still have to show up as ourselves. I think audiences today have a
Mhm.
pretty acute bullshit detector, and again, that's why, like, when people are like, who do I have to be? And like, if it's not like character comedy, it's you still have to be you, like, but 1.3 times more, I think,
Yeah.
because otherwise then it's not authentic. And then how are people going to connect if they think, you're not being genuine or authentic with them? But yeah, speaking of connecting, I guess, like, I'm fucking terrified of crowd work. You engage like wonderfully with the audience, and I've seen you even like you've handled some like, some hecklers and stuff. But like, can you tell me how in your opinion, like how does crowd work add value to a performance? And what advice would you give people like me who would like to improve at it?
Oh, well, that's really nice to say. Thank you. That's very nice. I think, yeah, so with crowd work and with heckles, it's one of those things. If you're going to dip your toe in and do it like gently, do little bits. Don't jump in and immediately go, right, I'm going to do 10 minutes of talking to the audience. Just like, don't jump straight in. I would say, like, do like one or two questions maybe, and then move on to your material and stuff like that. So do like little bits gently. As it's, I guess it's like a skill, like a muscle that you have to flex and practice using, and you have to keep practicing with it to keep it in shape. I think, yeah, it's one of those things. Again, it's a bit daunting when you first start it, and I'm still practicing it. I'm still getting better. I'm not all the way there at all. I do little bits and then go into my material. I'm not one of those people who could do like a whole set of chatting to a crowd. Um, but I would say, yeah. So just dip your toe in gently first of all, and then as you get more confident, try a bit more. I think, like, when in terms of like answering questions and people heckling and stuff like that, the thing is with heckles, it's interesting because, again, it's one of those things you learn how to deal with it by practicing and by doing, and it's an instinct that you hone over time. So, like, when people will heckle, you can get different kinds of heckle. You can get like what I call good heckles, where you get people where there's goodwill there, and they're shouting stuff
True.
out because they're excited or because they agree with something that you said.
Mm.
sometimes they're like, yeah, to a point that you've made or something like that. So they're not trying to be like intentionally disruptive. They're just kind of being a bit too
They're
enthusiastic, maybe.
enthusiastic.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to acknowledge that in the room as like, you agree with me. Good. Okay. So those kind of people where they're kind of excited about what you're saying, you can't come down on them too harshly because then you're kind of killing the vibe in the room and killing their enthusiasm, which you don't
Mm-hmm.
want to do. So those people you have to kind of treat gently, and you just kind of gently correct them. You sort of go, okay, yes, that's good that you're excited, but also I need to do this. It's different when you've got someone who's being like actively hostile, or you've got
Yeah.
somebody who has had a bit too much to drink, or a bit too much of something else, and they're just not like, they're checked out, they don't care. That's different, and I think you have to come down on them a bit more harshly. And that's rare, thankfully, that happens. I would say 90% of the time that I'm heckled, it's people who actually agree with what I'm saying and they're just a bit excited. And you kind of learn to deal with that. It's one of those things where the more you practice, it's you learn how to make those split-second decisions. You learn to kind of assess each person and go, right, what they've said, is that just overexcitement? Is that someone who's being like hostile?
True, true.
Is it, yeah, and all those kind of things. So you learn in the moment to make the decision about, how harshly do I go with this person? Are they being helpful to the night, or are they trying to actually derail it? And you learn how to make those decisions quite quickly as you're on stage.
And this comes back again to the point you made about like you have to get a lay of the land, right? You have to be able to read the room. And I think, it's a skill. I mean, it's a meme, right? Like read the room, but like it is a skill. And I think, it's not just about assessing like what the situation is like in a short amount of time, but also just adjusting and adapting, and I think not being thrown by the reaction. And it is something that I still that still scares me, because what's in my head is like, oh, okay, let's say crowd work. If I do crowd work and I ask this person a question, I certainly know the direction I'm steering them in, but that doesn't mean they're going to give me what I want.
Yeah.
And if they give me nothing, then it just, with all of my best intentions, it could make me look like a dick, like I'm embarrassing
Yeah.
someone, which I don't want. With hecklers, though, oh my God, the gloves are off, because I've heard some horrible things.
Yeah.
Um, but that for me, like what I've done is I actually, again, I have a very in your face, like people know what my vibe is. So I think I also know what their vibe is. Like I know the kind of people who would heckle me in a hostile way. So I have like clapbacks in my back pocket. But I mean, again, it is a skill I'm still kind of trying to work on, is like what you said, to like just like, gauge the intention and then adjust accordingly, like with like I guess the right level of response, or like the right intensity.
Yeah.
So well, yeah, but speaking of like, I guess, hostility, um, I do want to ask, and of course I ask everyone, like I meet in stand up who identifies as femme or them, like, how does your identity as a woman like factor into your experience as a comedian?
Yeah. Again, that's a really good question, and it's one of those things, like, I could spend the whole Q&A just answering that one question. It's something that honestly it factors in a lot, and it very much depends on like the gigs that you go to, whether people are kind of receptive to you or not. I mean, and this is an interesting thing about being someone who gigs in London versus gigging in other places. I kind of get both. They're kind to me, they're two slightly separate worlds, and you get like an experience of two different worlds by doing that. Um, so I would say, like, yeah, there is still occasionally, unfortunately, you do still get the thing of people saying women aren't funny. And so you're kind of walking into rooms sometimes where they've already made that decision about you before you've even said anything. They've
Yeah.
seen they've before you've even got up on stage, they've seen, like a poster with women on it, and they're like, oh, this isn't for me, and they're kind of mentally checked out. I've had gigs, for example, where, and maybe you've had this, maybe other people have had this, where there is a point where certain, quite often male members of the audience will go out and get a pint as soon as you come up to the stage. They decide that's the time they're going to go
Yep.
to the bar and have a drink.
Yep.
They've already checked out of what you're going to say. And it's not like I'm going to nip out, get a drink and come back. It's they go out the room and they're gone, and they're gone for like half an hour, and they've decided, oh, this is the point where I'm, this woman is not for me. And if my style isn't for you, that's absolutely fine. But it's when they haven't even heard a single thing that you've said.
When
You
it's
go,
not about you, but it's
yeah,
about like the fact that it's about your identity and not
yeah.
the actual act. Yeah,
So
no.
yes, so
I
that's
mean, it's
mm,
inevitable, and it's unfortunately that is the reality. I think we've moved a little bit forward, but there's still so much work to be done.
mhm,
I mean, I read on Chortle that like for every six male comics that are booked in the UK, it's one woman on a lineup.
yes,
Um, and it's that's from 2024.
mhm,
That's a scary stat, but I think what we can do really is just like again, like we can work to lift each other up. Um, and if people aren't for us, that or sorry, don't if we're not for other people, then we're not for other people. And if you're going to judge me based on my identity, then you're not going to like the rest of my act. And so I do think part of what can make stand up very scary is like finding your audience. Because yes, it's one thing to win people over, but it's another thing also to put yourself in the kind of situation and do also the sort of gigs and work with people, who will not hold your identity as a like a barometer for your talent. um,
yeah,
and no, you're right. It is critical. What I do love though, again, like I was a comedian. I started out in Hong Kong and then the Philippines. I performed in other countries, but like that was really where I found my footing as a stand-up. And I came to London, and the scene here is massive. This is the biggest circuit I've ever played. Um, and it could be overwhelming. Like I didn't know where to get started. So like what advice would you give like to newbies or comedy curious people? Like how do you start performing in a market like London where there's
yeah.
so many open mics, there's so many gigs, and how do you even, figure out where to go?
Yeah, so this is this is something I think you kind of, it's that thing of like launching yourself out there. And like you say, London is such a big scene. It's a very sprawling scene. And that's kind of the good thing about that is that it means there are so many nights and they all have slightly different vibes. So you can go around and try them and find which ones are your tribe. Literally find your tribe, find the people, and literally go and do like 10 different ones. Out of those 10, you might find one or two where you go, I would go back to that, and then you kind of build the network from there. So it is very much a case, it's like having a buffet. You go up to the buffet, you take a little bit of whatever's there, you
You got to
try it.
try.
Yeah,
You
you
won't
got
know,
to
right,
try.
if you don't try.
Exactly. And I just want to give a lovely shout out to Bitches in Stitches for this, right? Because as a room, my goodness, I mean, the vibes are just impeccable. I
Thank
love what
you.
you've done with Bitches in Stitches. It's one of those things where, like, as you say, it's about finding your audience and helping your audience find you. And honestly, when I've played Bitches and Stitches, the warmth in that room and the fact that people there have actively come to see women and femme people, and like the vibes, it's just, it's so lovely that people are like excited in the room when you're there, and it means it just elevates everything. And I just like I love what you've done. And when
Thank
you sort of
you.
approached me to sort of come and do things, I just immediately, it's like an immediate yes, because the whole ethos of it and just everything about it, and the fact that like in your audience, it's a complete mixture of people in the audience. You have women, you have men, you have people. It's not like a space that excludes
No,
people.
no, no.
Absolutely not. It's one of those things where people have just come to see comedy, and it feels like, oh, it so happens that it's femmes and
Hmm.
men's
Hmm.
and women and
Hmm.
all sorts, and it's such a lovely thing. And I just, yes. So in terms of like finding your tribe, I'm very glad I found Bitches and Stitches, because it's
Thank
just
you so much.
amazing what you've done.
And I think, I mean, it goes to show, right? A, like, stop saying women aren't funny. Like, we are funny. And B, also, like, there is a need for us to create more opportunities, I think, for women in stand up because we
Mm.
are here. We are here. Like, I see some posts sometimes, like, for some, bookers or producers looking for more non-male people on the lineup. I'm like, we are here,
Yeah.
bro. Like, we are here.
Yes.
Um, and like I think the only thing to do is just keep growing the Fempire, man.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And it's one of those things, like I have this conversation with other sort of bookers and things quite a lot, where they go, I'm not getting many women or non-binary people like applying to my night. Why? Why is that? And it can be, so I think it's a few things. And it's not necessarily that people are like, being actively sexist or hostile or anything like that. But there are things that are kind of extra considerations sometimes that I think
Well, yeah, I agree
people
too.
don't.
Like, I don't necessarily think that like when people, when some bookers struggle to find non-male performers, it's not necessarily that they're deliberately trying to exclude people, but
No.
again, they're working within a system that
Yes,
wasn't engineered to support us. So
exactly.
there needs to be extra care, I think, to make space
Yeah,
for more different types of performers. And I do
yeah,
think that's possible. And I am very optimistic about that because I'm gonna keep doing this until we do start to make bigger changes. But I what I would like to ask next is what is your goal with comedy? Like, what's the dream? Are you at the place you want to be? Do you want a Netflix special? Like, what is where do you want to take your comedy career?
Oh well, I think everybody wants a Netflix special, Fran, don't they? I mean, let's be honest. Like, let's not lie about this. I
Money's
think,
great, man. Of course I want it.
of course, I mean, getting it. Oh, no chance, no way. But we can
Yeah, no
dream, can't we?
chance.
We can dream. Oh, I would love to make a living from this somehow. I mean, it would be amazing to have that, as something that pays the bills. I mean, but even if that doesn't happen, it's something that I will just keep doing because I love doing it anyway. I think I'd love to be one of those people that has like a portfolio career. I think, do some stand up, do a podcast, do an occasional
Fractional
panel
work, they're
show.
saying.
Yeah, exactly. Like, do all sorts. I mean, like, someone I really admire, and I look at their career and I go, I'd love something like that. Is Callie Beaton. I don't know if you know
I'm not
her.
familiar.
Okay, she follow her on Instagram because she is
Will do.
amazing, and she is like an amazing person. So she started out in like mega high profile corporate jobs. I think she worked. She was like the head of something. It was like the head of something in America. She was like the head of a TV channel in America for ages. And she was like mega high up in the corporate world. And then she kind of quit that and started doing stand up. And she's like on TV doing stand up now, but she's on Instagram, and she posts gorgeous pictures of her dog anyway. So apart from anything else, go and look
Nice.
her up, Callie Beaton. But she's an amazing person because she is one of those people. She will go and do like corporate speaking gig and absolutely smash it, and then she will be on a TV panel show the next day, and then she's writing a book, and then she's doing a podcast, and that is the sort of thing I would love to do. Yeah, I think.
You are an artist. See?
Yeah. Okay. What are your aspirations with this? I mean, I know you have so many feathers to your bow, Fran, but what would you like to do?
Oh, and my comedy career, here's the thing, is like I had a really big think about it, is that, I've kind of spent the last 5 years very laser focused on community, because that's very important to me. Um, and people have asked me like, so you've been doing this for a while, you probably have like an hour. I'm like, I have never written an hour. And I think it's a matter of, like me wanting to achieve both. I think I can do both. I would love to, have a solo show and put a full hour together, which I'm working on this year. Debut at Fringe, maybe when I can afford a venue. But again, when I really think about it too, like if I had to stop doing stand-up comedy tomorrow, my dream would be that other people would continue doing what I did and making more space for femme and them comics, to be seen. Because I mean, if we really want to say we care about growing the comedy scene anywhere, then we need more people on stage that are representative of the world we live in. Um, and I'm not going to take that on myself, but I would love, when the day I stop doing this, that someone else or 10,000 other people like come and take my place. I think that really is the goal. Um, and a Netflix special would be nice. But until that happens, we've got our corner of the universe, here on social media, on Instagram and stuff. My question is, how about you? If you had to stop performing and, doing stand-up comedy, what would you like how would you like people to remember you? And what would you like people to have taken away from your act?
Yeah. Oh gosh, it feels really sad even thinking about, if I had to stop. I think um how I would want to be sort of remembered as a comic. I would like to be remembered as someone who left like a good feeling in the room and who sort of left good vibes. I'm I'm not one of those big barnstorming finisher comedians, I don't think. But I'm one of those people I reckon like I can sort of have a good vibes, across a night. So, if people remember me as like, bringing a good energy to something and sort of leaving the room in a good state after I've been on, then that would be a good thing. If people can sort of remember me, hopefully they think I'm kind of warm and, have a nice energy to me. I know I'm sort of more of that gentle energy rather than anything. But sometimes gentle is good. So yes,
I
hopefully
think the
that's
world could
fine.
stand to be a little bit more gentle these days, let's be honest. And
Gentle but strong like toilet paper. There we go. There we go.
no, I do love that. And again, I mean, it's not my quote, but I do love it. They say laughter is the shortest distance between two strangers, and whatever vibe you bring to the function or carry onto that stage with your performance, we as comedians, I think connection should be the goal, right? When we make people laugh, we want them to feel connected. We don't want them to feel worse than when they came in there. And, I do think, you do a wonderful job of that. Again, like, I've not forgotten like the very first gig we did together at the Bell for G&B.
Yeah.
And there is really something very special about that. And I think like when we two very different comics can do that, when there's a night that is really centered and prioritizes like, all right, we're not punching down, we're like creating that sense of belonging, that people really kind of need more in this world today. It is a wonderful thing, and there's nothing like it.
100%.
But yes, okay, we're coming to the end of the hour. And I know there were some technical difficulties in the beginning, but like, thank you so much for being our first live Q&A. Again, like, I think you gave some very poignant advice just about like remembering that, like, there is a skill, that level required to succeed at stand up, but at the end of the day, like, you don't have to be perfectly confident. I don't think any of us
No,
are ever perfectly confident before we begin. Confidence builds, right? It doesn't just
yes,
happen. Um,
exactly.
and like, again, I would love to work with you again. Let's do it again. Um, and to everyone who tuned in or everyone who's watching this later, like, thank you very much. If you have follow-up questions for Amber or for Bitches and Stitches, please do comment. And thank you so much. And I will see you next time at the next gig.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Fran.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.